Okay, so do you know what an average is or how to find the average?
Yeah. Don't you just add up the numbers and then you divide them by how many numbers you have?
Yes, that's correct. But I want to show you a different way of thinking about averages. So let's say that you have 20 books that are in four piles with five books each, like this. Yeah?
Yes.
And let's say that from the first pile, we give three of the books to the third pile, like this. And from the last pile, we give one of the books to the second one. So something like this. And we've changed how many books are in each pile, but has the total number of books changed?
No.
Good. Okay, so now what if I wanted all of these piles to have the same number of books? How many books would be in each pile?
Uh, you would have five.
Yes, exactly. So that is the other way of thinking about averages. The average in this context is the number of books that you would need to have in each pile if you wanted each pile to have the exact same number of books and still maintain the same sum altogether. It doesn't necessarily mean that each pile has the same number of books. It just means that is the number that each pile would have if they had the same number of books and if the sum of all the books was still the same. Cool?
Yes.
Okay, good. So then let's try out this problem. It says a man drove a car at an average rate of speed of 45 miles per hour for the first 3 hours of a 7 hour car trip. If the average rate of speed for the entire trip was 53 miles per hour, what was the average rate of speed in miles per hour for the remaining part of the trip? So, how do you think we should do this problem?
Um, okay. So, it says 45 miles per hour for the first 3 hours. So, would we multiply the 45 times three first?
First? Yes, that's a good start. Okay, so if we multiply 45 times 3, that gives us 135. And so, what does that mean?
Um, so he went 135 miles in the first 3 hours, right?
Yes, exactly. Okay, so what's next?
Okay, so then do we just multiply 53 times 4?
No. The 53 miles per hour is the average that he drove for the entire trip. And if we just multiply that by 4, then it's almost like we're assuming that 53 miles per hour is the average that he had just on the last 4 hours of the trip, right? So, like, let me draw this out. Okay, so this is a representation of the 7 hour trip, right? And for the first 3 hours, he was driving 45 miles per hour. And for the entire trip, it is 53 miles per hour. And what are they asking for?
They want to know what the average rate of speed is in miles per hour for the rest of the trip.
Okay, so they're looking for this part, the average rate of speed, right? This is our x. Okay, so how can we get there? And so far, you said that the first 3 hours, he drove 135 miles. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think we should do now?
Um, do we multiply the 135 times 2 and then see what we have to add for the last one?
No. So you're saying like if we basically multiply the 45 times 7 to see if that'll give us the answer.
Yeah.
No, because that's going to assume that each one of these hours he drove 45 miles only, right?
Oh, okay. Then maybe do we add the 45 and then the 53 and then divide that by 2?
Oh, I see. So you want to find the average of this one and this one?
Maybe?
Okay. Uh, but that's not necessarily going to give us the average here, is it?
I don't know.
Okay, so I'll kind of jump in and show you what we could do here. So the way that you were thinking for the 135, right, is that each one of these hours, the first 3 hours, he drove 45 miles per hour. So that means 45, 45, 45, and we multiplied it and we got the 135. What if we did the same thing with the 53 miles per hour and we multiplied that by 7?
Okay.
So that would be 53. We multiply that by 7. We end up with 371. So 371 miles is how far the entire trip was. Yes?
Yeah.
So then how far did he have to travel for the last 4 hours? What was the distance that he traveled there?
Um, oh, do we just subtract 371 minus 135?
Yes, exactly. So let's do that on the side. So that's 236 miles. Okay, so then from here, can we figure out how many miles he must have driven per hour for the 236 miles?
Uh, I think so. Would we multiply the 53 times the 236?
No, not quite. Think about it this way. Imagine that I went on a trip and I told you that I went 236 miles in 4 hours. Would you be able to tell me how many miles I went for each hour approximately?
Oh, okay. So do we just divide it by 4?
Yes, exactly. We divide the 236 by 4, and that is going to give us 59. So 59 miles per hour is his speed for the rest of the trip. And that actually makes sense, right? He would have to have driven a lot faster in the remaining part of the trip in order for the overall average to be 53. He had to have driven quite a bit in order to pull this 45 miles per hour average up to a 53. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. It makes sense after you look at it.
Okay, good. Yes. I think what confuses a lot of students for this kind of problem is the fact that when you initially said that each one of these is 45 miles per hour, you multiplied 45 times 3 initially, right? And we got this 135. What confuses students is because they assume that, okay, well, if I did that, then I'm saying that each one of these hours was 45 miles. And then when you have to multiply this by 7, then it can be kind of confusing because maybe you're thinking, like, well, I already said that this is 45 miles in this hour. So how can I now just change it and say that it was actually 53 miles per hour? But remember what we discussed over here with the averages and what that means? It means that each one of these 45s is just an assumption, and that chances are it might have been all over the place. We don't really know. But we know that the total miles that was traveled was 135. And so I think that that's what's confusing to students about it, just the 53 miles and seeing that okay, that's going to give me the sum for the entire time. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that is how much they drove in every single hour. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get that.
All right, good.